What is up, boys and girls? It is the Sound Alchemist back at it again to bring you guys Warhammer 40k lore. This time, we were sent in a story from Daka Daka. I believe the guy's name is... I don't remember the guy that sent it to me, but this story was made by DG White 87. He's got a pretty cool fanfic story about Nurgle called Despair. So I'm going to be reading that to you, but the images that you see here are done by somebody that works at GW. I believe this was posted yesterday on the Warhammer community page, and this artist talks about his Nurgle army. It is honestly beautiful in a disgusting way. I don't know how else to call that, but that's what I call your mama. Beautiful in a disgusting way. I really need to stop with these jokes. Anyway, guys, check out this awesome army by this dude. I will link the Warhammer community page down in the description below, so you guys can go check them out. And if you're not subscribed to them or liked on Facebook, please do that. They put out great content since they are the official GW 40k page. Anyway, here is here is the story, Despair. He had failed. The thought filled him with more dread than awaiting the charge of a greenskin horde. The Chasseur stared at the corpse of the ethereal his detachment had been assigned to protect. His troops had gathered around the impromptu funeral. Some openly wept, and he didn't have the heart to discipline them. They all now bore the burden of allowing one of the greatest tragedies to have ever befallen their sept. It was just supposed to have been a simple operation to annex this agri world. What the humans called a warp storm had overtaken the system, and it was determined that the planet had been cut off from their Imperium of Man. Then the Barbarians came. Their ship screamed into the system like a predator pouncing on prey. When their troop carriers fell from the sky, he was prepared to fight Space Marines. What he got were monsters. Savage versions of the enhanced Guayla warriors bounded out, riding giant beasts of fur and fang. It had taken the entire firing line to fell one when the rest of the pack had burst from a nearby ruin. Their leader had barreled his way to the honored ethereal and tore him to pieces without hesitation or regard to the Great One's pleas for reason. From there, it had almost become a complete rout, but he managed to regain a semblance of order and drove them off with the help of the Riptide heavy battlesuits they had assigned. Now all that was left were the sounds of near howls and their shame. The wolves would soon return. As the Chasseur brooded on their situation, the unnatural skyline had taken a sickly quality, and the droning of insects could be heard in the wind. His suit's comms burst into life, and from it came the sound of thousands of tiny wings beating in unison. It had begun to take an almost familiar melody, like a song he could almost remember being sung by a stranger. He tried to raise the others and confirm that they were receiving the same strange signal, but none of them reacted to his calls. They could still be lost in mourning. Then a voice became audible over the haunting sound. It was barely a whisper at first, but soon it was as if the voice was in the suit with him. He can feel a breath on his ear. He had wanted to disengage his comms, open his suit, but a strange malice gripped him. "Worry not, little one. I wish you no harm. Rarely does your kind even glimmer in the sea of souls, but your despair is a shining beacon in the dark. Such suffering is rare, potent." The voice spoke with the dying words of 1,000 mortals on their sick beds. The Chasseur had vomited inside of his suit at some point. He could not recall, and then his suit blared with warnings for his vitals, but he continued to listen while the droning began to sound like a woman faintly humming. "Your sadness must find an outlet. Allow me to aid you. Allow me to ease your suffering, as only the grandfather can." The voice began to change too, taking on a distinctly feminine and disturbingly familiar quality. "What would you ask in return?" he choked out through the phlegm-caked lips. "I wish for nothing but to share my father's gifts with you and your people, and we can bring you deliverance. "All you have to do is let me in," the voice said. The Chaos-O was becoming lightheaded. He wasn't sure how long he had stood over the corpse of the ethereal, but now it was all he could see. The humming was growing louder and louder, and he could almost recognize this melody. Then, as fever sweat creased his brow, it came to him in a flood like a boiling, bursting fullness. As a young child, he had contracted a debilitating fever that had almost crippled him. His future as a fire warrior was in question, but his matriarch had stayed by his side and tended to his sickbed. She taught him the combat drills she had missed from the day's lesson. At his worst moments, she hummed a local song she had picked up from the Gui-la. This song was now all he heard, and then with a cracked and bleeding smile, he began to hum. Their commander had not moved from his place of mourning for some time, and some fire warriors began to worry that he had become grief-stricken in a catatonic state. There were always rumors of such things happening to commanders who had allowed an ethereal to die. Then the Chaos-O jerked suddenly, as if in a palsy. His bodyguards moved to aid him, but their comms came to sudden life. All they could hear was the sound of their commander humming, and it was infectious. As the signal spread from earpiece to earpiece, the whole detachment began to hum in sync. Suits began to leak blackish fluids and ruptured seals. Armor plates began to corrode and flake. Power cells waned with strain. As one turned to the Chaos-O, now the leader of the choir, from whom a great pool of bodily fluids had now formed. A huge hand burst from the pool and began to pull its colossal bulk into this world. "The bargain is struck," it said with the voice of a woman long dead. Norag Wolfkin found it hard to restrain himself at best of times, but now it was especially difficult after having tasted first blood. He had personally dismembered the Xenos leader, and it wounded his pride immensely that he had not been able to finish off the rest. However, reinforcements had come, and the time to ride into battle was at hand once again. He rubbed the wolf-tooth talisman which hung from his ear. Most of the pack were doing the same with the various talismans and fetishes that each warrior adorned their armor with. They had all seen the change in the storm, and knew what it meant. Still, the Tau were hardly the type to employ the ruinous powers, but it never hurt to be cautious. It didn't help that the Iron Fist chapter librarians had all reacted very strongly to something they could not describe. One was still bleeding from the nose despite his cells. A very bad omen indeed. As the wolves and the Space Marine bikers bounded over the hills which overlooked the Tau position, they were immediately fired upon. Not from the clean blue of plasma and ion weaponry, but by putrid, burning warp matter. Shields that had weathered thousands of years of enemy fire fizzled and died, as their wielders and their mounts were enveloped in burning horror. Then the demons appeared. First, a bloated demon prince flying on wings of buzzing botflies crashed into the ground in front of the wolf lord. The shambling corpse-like creatures pulled themselves from a nearby marsh that had been a verdant forest when Norak first attacked. Following them was an obscene horror of blubber and vileness that stung the eyes just to look upon it. On its shoulder sat a version of the creature in miniature crackling with delight. The Space Marines charged with a prayer to the Emperor on their lips. The words hadn't fully left those of the apothecary when a great ball of burning pus was vomited from the sky and annihilated him, along with another brother librarian. Undaunted by their losses, the Iron Fists hit the wall of rotting flesh, like the avenging angels they were bred to be. When they came to a halt amid the slime, they found a tide of grasping hands and rusted knives reaching out for them. Their bowels clenched in agony as the giants appeared at their side. With each swipe of his massive cleaver, armor parted like rotten wood, and flesh blackened. Soon only the chapter master remained, his entire command squad, and his charter's entire librarius, with a devastating loss to his chapter. He was now an island in a sea of maggot-eaten bodies, with a great shadow moving towards him. Norag knew that if he could break this disgusting alignment of space marines and demons, he could tear through the heart of the Tau lines. Even tainted by demons, the Tau could hardly hope to stand up to the wolves of Fenris. His pack leapt the demon prince and tore great chunks from the creature's flanks, but what awaited his mouth's jaws were layers of fat as hard as adamantium, and flies beyond counting. They swarmed into the mouths and eyes, making it near impossible to strike out accurately. The demon was terrifyingly fast for being very fat. Swing a heavy chainsword around with incredible speed. One by one, the demon crushed the Wolf Lord's riders and their mounts, using its unnatural strength. Norag was overcome with disgust when he saw that for every member of his guard that died, a new demon joined the ranks, now swarming with his beguiled allies. With a snarl of rage, he broke free of the flies and swung savagely at the towering monstrosity with his relic frost axe. When he hit it, it felt like he had struck the towering stone of the fang itself. The axe buried itself in the gut of the monster, only to be caught by the fiend's flesh and dragged from his hands. Smashing his wolf to the ground, the demon picked up Norag in a powerful embrace, pinning his hands to his side. The garden grows each day. It is time to plant another seed, the demon prince slurred. And with that, the Wolf Lord's armor finally gave way, and so did the body within. And unfortunately for you all, I will leave you in despair for not knowing what happens next. Meaning, if you guys want to finish this story, head on over to the link in the description below. Give this guy some thumbs up, and let him know how you guys think his story is. Does it need more Nurgle stuff? Or perhaps you don't want to see the Tau in it. Anyway guys, like I said, check him out. The description is down in the link below. Also, go to the Warhammer community page. The link is down below where you could see this guy's awesome Nurgle army in its entirety, plus a few more snippets of its lore. And that's all I've got for you guys, so I'll see you guys tomorrow. This has been the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, signing out.